Can we go ride today? Nope. Raining like crazy in Dallas. No riding for moi. Alright guys, I want to talk to you about bleeding your TRP brakes. And this is probably the third time I've bled them. I don't know, the first time I did it on the front brake, it was fine and it was great, but I've had so much issues with the rear brake. 7 months into these TRP Trail SL brakes, they are amazing. The modulation is awesome, stopping power is awesome. Even with the having a spongy lever a little bit, it still brakes great. But it's just annoying because sometimes when I'm braking, the lever is coming close to my finger, on the handlebar, so it's annoying. So what you're gonna need is a number 3 Allen screw, hex screw, bleed block. So it's a 4-piston caliper, so you just need a 4-piston caliper bleed block, and a bottle of brake fluid. This is a 50 milliliter. So I usually take a good chunk of this when I'm bleeding it. And then, a bleeding bottle and a syringe and some hoses. So you're also gonna need a number 15 bolt adapter or hex bolt. I don't know what it's called, but it's basically to take off the bolt on the caliper reservoir. So the first step that I do, I'm gonna take off the reservoir cap on this rear brake lever. Get the caliper straight, like nice and level. And then take your little number 15 hex bolt and remove that. I am using my power drill, which is probably not recommended to put it back on, but I do it ever so lightly. I don't want to like strip anything out, especially when I'm tightening this. I make sure to tighten it very, very slowly. I don't have a hand driver for this. So once you pull out the bolt, here's your bolt. Super small, don't lose it. Put in your bleeding adapter. This whole bleeding kit I bought on Amazon for like, I don't know, 20 bucks, 30 bucks. And it comes with a whole bunch of bleed blocks, reservoirs, adapters. So I bought this specific Tektro adapter kit. So put this on here, just leave it, let it sit. Once you pump in your brake fluid, the reservoir will just throw everything in here, and we'll keep this on through the end. Okay, so we got the front lever set up. Let's go do the rear. All right, so from the beginning, take off the rear tire. Hey, quick tip. We're gonna take off the rear tire. If you have a Shimano setup or whatever SRAM, I have a Shimano. I take my clutch off. I'm taking off my rear tire. Don't forget to take off your clutch because it makes it way easier to remove the rear tire. Take your axle off. I mean, these are all pretty explanatory steps, but the main thing was taking off that clutch. It makes it so much easier. All right, first step is to remove the pin from the back of the brake pad screw. This is what it looks like. Don't drop it, it's hard to find. Then finish taking this off. Remove this pin with your number 3 Allen. Now you can basically pull out your brake pads, because you need to take these out in order to put the bleed block in. I basically just push them out from the top. I probably should be wearing gloves because I don't want to get grease or anything on my pads. Now I've got my glove on. I'm going to continue pushing the pads out the top. Yeah, there you go. Bring your bleed block, put it into the caliper. Because basically what we're gonna do, we're bleeding the brakes. We're trying to get any air out of it. Basically, you're pushing fluid through the whole system to remove any air holes that are in it. Even when you go to bleed the lever, make sure you leave this in the whole time. First time I don't know why I took it out, and obviously when I went to go bleed it, or went to go do the lever bleeding, it got air back in the system. And that's probably what happened from the first time. I just never got all the air out. So I'm gonna try this again. Let's remove the bleed screw. So got that out. Now I can put in my other bleeding adapter on the rear. And let's fill this up. Usually it says to put like 10 to 15 milliliters, or you can say cc's. A tip, when you're searching how to do this, cc's and milliliters like the same damn thing. It's so freaking confusing. I don't know why there's two. But yeah, so I feel like to bleed the system I go through more than 10 to 15, so I just fill this up as much as I can. You know, you're not going to really use all the fluid in the system. It's just to push all the fluid through it. So if there's any air stuck in there in the lines, I just push more than I need to through it, because I just want to make sure I get everything out. And plus, when you pull the hose off, you can possibly get air into the system, so just be careful with that. Let me go put this on the table and fill this up. Alright, so I'm back. So place your hose onto the caliper bleeding bolt, and now we're going to start pushing this in through here. So just do it slowly. I'll turn the camera around in a second so you can see it going through, but I don't know if you can see, like, there's a little bit of air like in the hose itself, which is okay. Don't like that though. It'll push through. So I probably didn't need to do this. It's got air inside of the brake lever, but I'm just gonna re-bleed the whole system. You take this off. Let's usually start hand tightening this screw back on here, and then ever so lightly isopropyl alcohol. I love this name, isopropyl alcohol. Clean this up, get any leftover fluid off. Leave the brake block in there. Now let's go to the front caliper. Okay, so when I was bleeding this, fluid's going through the hose. As I was doing it, you could see air bubbles pushing through the system. So now what we got to do is get all the air out of the brake lever reservoir. So, you know, I've got fluid in here, which is fine. This is fluid that pumped through when I did it from the rear. Now I'm just going to cycle this a few times and get it tight. And at a certain point, you just hold it tight. So to do that, I'm just going to get like a strap and hold it. Okay, so the lever is really tight right now, so I'm just going to keep snapping it. Get any air out of the system. It feels nice. It feels really good, actually. I'm super happy with the way it feels. This feels significantly better than it did before. So you can see there's some air bubbles trying to work its way back in. You don't want that. You don't want this to go in. Why is it doing that? I don't know why it's going back up. Anyway, so cycle this a bunch of times. Okay, now I'm gonna let it sit here. I'm gonna tighten it up really quick and let it sit here for a while. So I've got this tie down strap here that I'm gonna use. You know, I use it to, like, when I'm moving things or just strapping things to the roof of my car. So now I'm gonna take this, pull it tight, and then just tighten this up like that. Hold it here so the lever's fully engaged. I'm just gonna let it sit here for like 15 minutes. I mean, I've even done it longer, like an hour, but this should be 15 minutes will be good. So we'll come back in a little bit. It's been about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less, but I feel like it's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take off my clamp. Move this. I'll go back through it again. A couple more times, like 20 times. feels super tight. I hope this lasts. So it feels awesome. Okay, so now, remember where you put your screw, that took me a second, the reservoir screw, I'm just gonna put it on top of my stem. And then just screw this off. You know, a little fluid might come out, which is okay. And then just put this back in. So it's okay that some fluid came out. We'll clean it off. Okay, now get some isopropyl alcohol. Clean off the rest of this fluid from the lever. I usually put a towel under here because fluid does get everywhere. Got some on my shifter. Just clean this off nice and clean. Because you don't want to leave it on here. It's gonna, fluid could eat up paint and get into the hose, the rubber parts. Here, I think I got some. Yeah, I got some back in here. So let me clean that off. So it's gonna feel really tight right now because you got the brake bleed block in the back caliper. So now I'm gonna take the bleed block off. Yeah, I made a grand old mess of my garage today. I got brake fluid everywhere, so make sure you find a good clean spot or put a cardboard down or something in the garage if you don't want to get your floor messy. So I'm gonna take the brake pad pin out, pull out the bleed block. So I made the mistake of leaving my brake disc right where I was putting the brake fluid hose when I was cleaning it up, and I got brake fluid on the pad, so I'm pretty sure it's soaked in there now, and I'm gonna burn this with a butane torch to see if it gets it off. If not, I'll just have to buy new pads. It's super hot. Alright, note to self, next time you do this, keep your brake fluid away from all your pads and everything. So I'm basically gonna I'm gonna put the pads back in here. This little holder. And then tuck them back up into the caliper. So it's a little tricky to get this back on. Ooh, you can feel the pad still hot. Yeah, not too bad though. All right. And now let's just push them back up in there. Alright, so it's been about a day since I put all the pads back together, and I've ridden it once. I haven't hit the trails because it's been raining a lot in Dallas, so everything's closed. But just riding around the neighborhood, just doing some quick brake tests. Like the levers on both the front and rear feel even now. They feel the same, the modulation's the same. And the pads are stopping too, as well as, you know, considering that I got brake fluid on them. So no noise, no squealing, and like no brake fade. So like I took it up to about 20 miles an hour and braked, and it felt fine. I'm happy with it. So hopefully this helps you guys out in your TRP SL brake install and, you know, bleeding process if you need to do that. Thanks.